What is going on, people of YouTube and the internet? So I'm getting ready to go to G10. It's going to be very, very exciting. But I wanted to do a little video of a knife maker which I am fairly certain you've never heard of. His name is Tim Wright, and I just kind of want to go into this knife that you're looking at and why I was able to get it and kind of what I think about it. So I've only had it for a few days, but it's turned out to be a pretty neat knife. But in case you didn't watch my last video, and judging by the view counts, you haven't, I was looking for kind of a traditional knife, and I'm still going to G10. I'm collecting tactical knives, and I really enjoy tactical knives, and that's great. But I was looking for something to wear with my suit. And I wear a suit quite often, and the Medford Praetorian tie was just not a great suit knife. I still love the tie, but just what I was looking for was something that you can slip into a coat pocket and really have it disappear in your suit, and the tactical knives don't necessarily fit that bill. Anyway, so basically I settled on a couple of slip joints, which were awesome. One was a Jared Osier, and one of them was this Bobby tool here. And while these were amazing, awesome knives, especially this one with the bottle opener, which I used very, very frequently, I had a couple complaints about the slip joints. So the first thing is you can't open them and clean them. Now, neither slip joint got the usage that you needed to open it and clean it a ton, but just not being able to do it, a little bit, I would say, annoying. Not a deal breaker for most people, but for me it was a little bit annoying. They weren't necessarily that thin. You can see this is this is probably a thin slip joint. It has two blades on it, but this is about as thick as my Jared Osier, and you can see my Praetorian tie. While the tie is much thicker, slipping this into your suit pocket, it's still quite noticeable. So I wanted something that you could slip into your suit pocket and not have it print so much. And lastly, and this is no knock on slip joints, and I know they're getting quite popular, and I think that they will be quite popular, is, when you're used to tactical knives and a knife locking up well, having that blade not locked up is just a little worrisome. I mean, even cutting into an Amazon box, it actually happened a few times where I'm cutting like this and I come back and it never closed on me, but that blade will hit the end of the box and give you a little springiness there, and it just doesn't make you feel wonderful when that blade's kind of wobbling back and forth on you. So I decided to set out to look for a dress knife, but maybe in a lockback, a gentleman's knife. And I remembered a maker that I met at the Solvang knife show, my first knife show that I've ever been to. And at the time I went to Solvang, I absolutely was not interested in any traditional knife. I wasn't looking for them. When I saw them on the tables, I really wasn't really paying too much attention. But for whatever reason, this maker really caught my eye because of what he was doing, and he made a tool to take it apart, and he actually called his model the Take Apart Knife. And as you guys may know, I enjoy taking apart my knives. So I remember having a conversation with him. I didn't buy a knife from him at the time, but he had a lotto and they sold the knives. So when I decided to move beyond the slip joints, I immediately, tried to find him. And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't that easy. I found his website, and I reached out to him, and I'm not sure if the email went nowhere or whatever it was, but he didn't respond. Maybe it went into my spam or whatever. But I had to actually call around to a few kind of old-time knife makers or a few dealers. Finally got a hold of him and kind of told him what I was looking for. Now, the gentleman's name is Tim Wright, and let me just show his card real quick. So if you're looking for him or you like what you see here, you can just refer to this video and find him a lot easier than I did. He's a maker out of Sedona, Arizona. Couple conversations with him, when I was interested in buying the knife, was that he makes everything by hand, no automation. Not that he's against it. He's a very cool, down-to-earth dude. He doesn't judge anybody and how they make their knives, but to me, especially him being I would say lesser known maker in my world. I wouldn't say he's lesser known, but he only does the one Solvang show. So he doesn't build a lot of knives, and he doesn't have a lot of representation from dealers, and there's not a lot of collectors. Quite frankly, I haven't seen any collectors that have his stuff. But, the way I buy knives, as you guys know, I generally don't sell them. I buy them for my enjoyment, and as long as it makes sense and I like the artist and kind of all those things line up, I don't mind paying for a knife that's not that well known, that maybe doesn't have the secondary that a lot of different knives would have, especially since I was going to use this knife. So with that particular intro, let me pop open this knife and show you what I thought was special. Now, as you may see right away, it is a tiny knife. In fact, when we were talking, he was calling it the tiny ass knife. So this is only my second pearl knife, the first one being the Stefano Nardelli hidden pivot flipper, bolster flipper. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of pearl, or I wasn't a huge fan of pearl. And so when Timothy told me that he really likes working pretty much only with pearl or other materials that don't move, but he wanted it to keep it simple, so we had a discussion about mammoth, and he just didn't want anything too terribly busy, and he especially didn't want anything that would move in his knife. He's a longtime knife maker. Just to give you a quick background, although he's not particularly well known in my circle, I'm sure there are collectors out there that really do enjoy his work. Like I said, he only goes to that one Solvang show, so most knife collectors probably wouldn't know him, or at least know him all that well. But he has been making knives for a long time, probably to the tune of 20-30 years. So he absolutely knows what he's doing, and just having a quick conversation with him, I just sensed the passion in his work. He was a little bit particular about how he built it. He didn't want to use any Mokutai. He didn't want to use any mammoth. So if you're kind of looking for someone who's gonna do whatever you want them to do, and you like this model, I'd still reach out to him. But he basically kind of told me he likes very simple knives, very basic knives, not tactical, but kind of gentleman folders. And he also makes kitchen knives, and apparently he makes amazing kitchen knives. I don't collect or know much about those, but I would say the majority of his stuff is kitchen knives. And he mentioned he makes probably about 5 to 10 folders per year, based on the demand for them, and that for the most part he'll use pearl or some other inlay that he likes using, and he doesn't like it too terribly busy. So like I said, the first thing you'll notice is this is a tiny knife, and let me just show for some comparison. Here is a Federal Reserve note here, and you can see, and that's a tool, and we'll talk about that, how small this thing is. And let's put it next to the slip joint that I purchased, and then of course we need to compare it here to the Medford. I guess I could put the Medford down here. So as you can see, it is the smallest knife of my collection. He kind of was joking around saying it's about the size of a nail clipper. I don't believe that. It's more the size of a toenail clipper. Okay, so before we go into the knife, the basic reason why I purchased this knife was because of the creativity that Tim showed. Kind of his passion kind of aligned with my passion with regards to, when I saw the knife on his table at Solvang, I asked him about the tool, and he said actually the tool takes him quite a bit of time to manufacture, because he wanted all his customers to be able to open the knife. And here you'll see a custom 5-pivot tool here that he makes in-house. And with every knife, he gives you the driver to take it out. Another thing he does is I can open up the tool that he makes. That's his Wright logo there. And inside the tool, there is a little dropper. So when you open up your tool, you can put a little oil on there. This tiny little cap here comes off. And you can put some oil on your knife. Another thing he does, it's kind of like one of those Russian eggs here. Oops, well, these are tiny screws. I hope I don't lose that. Is that you pop the cap off, and inside he gives you 2 more screws. Now they're screwed into a holder there. I'm not going to unscrew those because they're hard enough to do without looking through an iPhone camera. Let's see if I can do this. And that's if you lose one of the screws. Now, obviously, I don't think that he thinks that anybody's actually going to lose a screw by taking one apart. I even spoke to him about how much he thought people were going to use these, and he was under no delusions that people were going to go beat on these things. He kind of knew that with his price point that most of the guys would be collectors buying these things. But I told him I was going to use it, and I was going to take it apart if it needed cleaning and all that stuff, and he was really, really, really excited about that. So let me put that back on. And so he did tell me that if I mar a screw or strip a screw or lose a screw, there's the screws are right there. So you can see right away that we're dealing with someone who just really enjoys making these things. And like I said, no CNC. This is all made by hand. And someone who put that much attention to detail in a tool. Okay. He also includes this pretty neat case here. So I'm going to put the tool back in the case. All right, let's take a look at the knife. As you can see, this knife is pretty small. It has no pocket clip, not that you need one. I have not carried it without the case, so I've only carried it in that case, and I can tell you, I was a little concerned that the case was too big, and I wouldn't want to carry the tool around, but it's tiny. I mean, it really, even with the case with the tool, you can see how thin it is, so it'll easily slip into your pocket. And just kind of the shape of it, even though it's a little bit wider with the tool, it's just very easy to carry. It actually gets lost. I carried it in the pocket with my keys, and it really, even in the suit pocket, it gets lost. And then I slipped into the jacket pocket, and then it's absolutely lost. So very easy to carry, even with the little tool. All right, so let's take a look at the knife itself. Like I said, this is only my second mother of pearl knife, but this happens to be called black lip pearl. And it's really quite beautiful. I'm actually surprised how stunning it is and how it changes in the light. It really is. When I first took a look at it, it looked kind of blackish gray to me in the pictures that he'd sent. And I said, oh, geez, oh, well, I didn't really like pearl. But when I got it in my hand, I'm like, holy smokes, this thing really has a lot of color thrown off of it. And it really changes when you change the angle as well. So, I don't know, black lip pearl is pretty neat stuff. This is my only black lip pearl. I'm thinking the Nardelli pearl is not black lip. Okay. One of the things, and I'm pretty sure I remembered this at the Solvang show, was how easy it was to open and close. It's not going to shake out or anything like that. Not that it would. It's a tiny knife, but I mean, man, is this really easy to open and close. So no issues whatsoever with opening and closing it. I did speak to him about the issue with slip joints rolling at the tip. He said he's thought of that. Although he has very tight tolerances, he dovetails a little bit of a material right there so that if it does come down too hard and it does strike material, it will strike that soft material and not roll the edge. Can't see it, but it is in there. I have not opened this knife up quite yet. I certainly will, especially as it gets dirty, but I haven't had the time to do it. But I wouldn't be afraid to do it. Since it's so easy to open, it will open pretty easily one-handed, especially if you give it some practice here. me close it up. I've kind of developed a nice technique on how to do it. So I can get it open and closed pretty easily with one hand, no problems whatsoever. Not the easiest thing to do, not the best looking way to open and close it, but I can get it open and closed with one hand, as you saw. And as you will see, that this blade here is not terribly thick. It is sharp as hell, so that's one thing he did really, really well. I love it when knife makers send extremely sharp knives. It's not a heavy knife, so as you see there, I don't mind. You know, when I touch it here, which is kind of sharp, it hasn't cut me yet, but it is extremely, extremely sharp stuff. And it is pretty thin, like I said, so I haven't really given it any heavy use. I did take it to the office. I have cut open boxes. A few negatives, and I talked to him about it, is even with just boxes cutting open, you can see it's scratched up quite a bit. This is SV30, so they don't make this steel anymore. I do have a couple knives made of it, but this knife seemed to scratch a little bit easier. No big deal. Like I said, I'm going to use it, and he's very, very cool, so I'm sure if I do something that I can't live with, I can send it back to him. But as of now, I'm just going to go ahead and continue to use it. And like I said, that was a maker named Tim Wright out of Sedona, Arizona. And I am extremely pleased with this knife. It is very, very pleasant to have in your pocket, especially when you're all dressed up. It really adds to the outfit. I will tell you, it's not cheap. He talked to me about how much time he spends on these knives, and I believe it. The quality is there. They're amazing action. I mean, it doesn't fall shut or anything like that, but it's very, very smooth, very, very nice feeling opening and closing, and the finishing detail work is absolutely amazing. But the knife is at this time in the $3,000 range, and you might be asking yourself, why in the world would you spend that much on such a small knife? Well, if you talk to any knife maker, especially ones who build them by hand, the smaller knives, you know, the cost of material goes down about this much, but then labor just skyrockets because it's much, much harder to make these smaller knives. So he actually charges the same amount for his larger ones and smaller ones. And since he's a custom maker, I mean, you can pretty much specify how big you want your blade, and he'll just, you know, enlarge or shrink the knife as a whole. But basically at this point, I really couldn't be any happier with the knife. You know, it's not the heaviest duty thing. It's not the most hard use thing in the world, so I'm going to be very careful with it. But as of right now, you know, while Bobby Poole really made a beautiful knife, especially in Mammoth, I'm going to use this more or less around the house when I can, especially with the beer opener there. But with the suits going to work, it's going to be my Tim Wright knife. I think that this is going to be the best knife. I'm going to probably have Greg Stevens make me a little slip, or any knife or any leather maker for that matter, make me a little slip so I don't actually have to carry the tool all the time. And I think that'll even be a little bit better, especially slipping into the suit pocket. But other than that, no complaints whatsoever. The knife is amazing, feels amazing, actually pretty fun to play with. As you saw there, I spent pretty much all day just opening and closing up this knife. No big deal, and a lot more quiet for my coworkers. So, but I'd highly recommend you reaching out to Tim if you had any questions about this knife or were looking for something similar. That, I think the next size up this is 2 in, I think, just under 3 inches. It's not a 3-inch knife, so it's maybe 2 3/4, something like that. Pretty small knife, and his larger ones are about 3.5 inches. I don't know if he goes any higher than that, but that's what he had available. I went with a smaller one, and I might pick up a larger one down the road. So I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. And put the Medford back in the picture there. Appreciate it. I'm on my way to G10 now, so hopefully you guys are watching this hopefully before or after G10, and you guys have scored something nice, and I look forward to seeing you guys at G10, and I look forward to hopefully seeing the nice stuff you guys get. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.